Welcome back to the Stan Simpson Show, joined now by Professor William Foster III, black belt, scholar, author, comic book historian. You're probably one of the foremost comic book historians in the country, particularly with black images. Let's talk about, first of all, how do you go from black belt in karate to having that interest to comic books? What's the fascination with comic books?
What's funny, my brother, actually comic books much predated my experience in martial arts. I was starting reading comic books back in the early 60s. And I was like 11 or 12 years old. I just really loved writing stories and finding out about stories. And as my first superhero, the guy who I love most of all was Superman. But as I started reading over the years, I started looking more and more for people that look like us. You could always see images of Africans, but you could never necessarily see African Americans unless they were porters or maids, and they'd have exaggerated features and fright wig hair. And it really kind of disturbed me. Surely we represent more than that. That didn't represent anybody who I knew or from my neighborhood. My dad was a cop. My mother worked for many years as a pianist for our church, people who were very positive examples. So I tried to reconcile that dichotomy and started looking and doing research.
The old Richard Pryor joke, right? They had the movie The Future, Logan's Run, no black people, and Pryor said, well, white folks aren't planning on us being here. So now, how did that hurt, though, when you're a young kid watching comics or reading comics, and you don't see yourself in there? It does what to you? When you find your place, what did that do for you from an emotional standpoint, from a psychological standpoint?
It's interesting. I think it goes right back to that experiment that was done by Brother Clark back in the 1940s, where the white doll and the black doll, and they've asked the black kids, which one did you think is better? The idea is that on one level, it kind of makes you feel a little less on your self-esteem. But if you're looking for positive role models, in the end, I guess a positive role model is a positive role model. I mean, I love Superman because he always fought for justice. He stood up for everybody. There was a sense of equality. So sometimes we go to the fantasy when we don't have the reality representing us.
But if you reaffirm stereotypes, and there have been some images back in the day of black folks in comics, you go back, you reaffirm the Sambo, right? If you reaffirm that, that's equally damaging. Like having good role models is kind of color blind, right?
No question.
But when you reaffirm stereotypes, that's also very damaging.
It's very important to see ourselves. And I found out through my research, because I grew up in Philadelphia, that the first black comic book, all black comic book done by black people was in Philadelphia in 1947, all Negro comics, and by a former newspaperman. And I began to appreciate that the same reason he used, I saw time and time again when black people created their own images. We got tired of not being able to see ourselves. So even though I come to it many years later, it's an argument or a place where many people had been before me.
So where are we now then? The various images from the Sambo to the all different negative. To where are we now? How's the evolution transpired, and where are we today?
We are in such a positive place you would not believe. There was an article on an online site that asked, do black books sell? How many black characters do we have? If you look historically, we have more than we've ever had before. Many of them created by African-American men, African-American women, and by people who are not people of color, but are still represented with dignity. So we're probably one of the best places we've ever been. Some people...
There's Obama cartoon. That's one had an Obama cartoon.
When comic book geeks found out that Obama was a comic book reader, they lost their minds. The number of images featuring not only him, but his wife, his dog, are just out there. And people are very excited the idea that we have, let's face it, this man represents the most powerful officer in the entire world. To find that this man is not afraid to tell people he reads comics, just exciting people to no end.
How about the black Disney princess? That's a big deal, right?
I was very much looking for that.
Right. So that's another offshoot of comic book to now animation, sort of having positive black figures or figures of color.
Absolutely right. It's all tied together. The idea that it's the first, Disney's been doing films since since before the first sound cartoon, 1920s. So to see a black princess, I mean, because they did The Lion King and they've done a number of characters, but really didn't represent us. Although there were stories that if you like a good story, they could represent us in that way. So it's a big change, and a very positive change, I think.
What is it about comic book aficionados that you don't outgrow the love for comic books? When folks heard you're coming on, we have two guys behind the scenes here saying, you know what, they enjoy reading comic books and they're a big fan. So how come you guys don't outgrow this thing? You figure at the age of 12 or 13, you kind of get over it, but this thing lasts forever. Why is that?
Well, I think it approaches you on a level that of storytelling and myth telling. And that's as old as the caveman. You know, when two guys are sitting in a cave and there's thunder and lightning outside and one guy's telling a story, the storytelling keeps you in. The idea of heroes, people who are larger than life, people who can affect change every day. And you've been in the news business for a while. We see the worst parts of our society represented. Here we have a world where somebody has the power to make a change. During the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, how many people wish there'd been a Superman to just fly down and, crunch the spreading oil and, then fly off, triumphantly. Thanks, Superman. Oh, you're welcome, folks. Everybody wants a hero. Everybody wants somebody who they can believe can affect change. Now, I tell...
So you weren't surprised when these movies went from comic books to movie and animation?
Absolutely.
You were not surprised by the popularity of Batman going to the big screen and Superman to the big screen, Spider-Man?
It's a myth story that needed to be told. And when you hear some of the lines that come from these movies, with great power comes great responsibility, and that's a lesson as old as mankind or humankind. The idea of, I want to have power, but you got to have responsibility on how to use it correctly. The idea when they started changing the story about Superman, that to make him a person who questioned what his great abilities were going to do. Mm-hmm. The idea that people look at him, that he's different. He's not of us, but he is among us. Makes us ask some real fundamental questions about how our society operates.
All right, now your book. Somewhere I have hidden here your book. Somewhere underneath the table. Boom!
Oh, nicely done.
Dreaming of a face like ours, it talks about, as you talked here, having young people of color seeing comic book images
Absolutely.
And pictures that look like themselves, and this was a labor of love for you. How long have you been writing this book? You've written many books, but
oh my goodness,
about 30 seconds.
About 5 years. Saving pieces that I've written, presentations I've been making, research that I've been doing. But the search goes on. I'm still going to be involved in it.
And you go around the country talking to groups about your love of comic books.
Actually,
and also
around
images.
The world.
Yeah.
In the spring, I'll be going to Sweden, and next summer, preferably to Costa Rica.
All right. One of the world's most foremost historians on comic books right here on the Stan Simpson Show. We'd love to have you on here, Professor Bill Foster.
Always a pleasure, my
All
brother.
right. When we come back, folks, we'll have a little conversation about entertainment. James Walker, a regular contributor here, will talk about who's out of the closet this week, a big star, and another major star running for president of Haiti, Fantasia. Do not go away. Walk Talk is next.